In this video, we'll be solving rational equations. A rational equation is an equation that has a rational expression or fraction for one or more terms. We'll begin by multiplying both sides of the equation by the least common denominator, or LCD. The equation that we'll be working with is x over x plus 5 added to 5 over x minus 5 is equal to 50 over the quantity x squared minus 25. Now I can factor this denominator, needs to be done before I determine my least common denominator. I can see that this is the difference of squares, and we know that that factors into x plus 5 times x minus 5. You'll also notice that x plus 5 is the denominator here, and x minus 5 is the denominator here. So our least common denominator is just going to be x plus 5 times x minus 5. So I'll multiply both sides of this equation by my least common denominator, which means that I'll multiply each term by that least common denominator. So my least common denominator is x plus 5 times x minus 5, and I'm going to write that over 1 and then write my first term, x over x plus 5. And that way we can see that this x plus 5 in the numerator and this x plus 5 in the denominator will cancel. That's the whole reason for multiplying by the least common denominator. So plus, and then my least common denominator again, x plus 5 times x minus 5 over 1, multiplied by my second term, which is 5 over x minus 5. And then that equals, and then let's do our least common denominator again, x plus 5 times x minus 5 over 1, multiplied by 50 over, and then instead of writing this expression, I'm going to write its factored form, x plus 5 times x minus 5. Now my canceling is next. X plus 5 in the numerator and x plus 5 in the denominator gives me 1. On this one I have x minus 5 in the denominator, so that's going to cancel with the x minus 5 in the numerator. And on this side, both of these factors cancel with both of those. So x plus 5, and then x minus 5 times, and then x minus 5. So now to write what's left, 1 times these factors over 1, I'll just have x minus 5 times x plus, and then on this one I'll have x plus 5 times 5, and then on the right side I just have 50. So let's distribute here and simplify and get rid of parentheses. X times x is x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Plus, and then distribute this 5. 5 times x is 5x. Plus, and then 5 times 5 is 25. And on the right side I have 50. So let's combine these like terms. Copy the x squared. A negative 5x and a positive 5x, those are going to cancel off. And I think I'm going to use the square root property, which means I'm going to put this constant on the other side since I don't have any x terms. So I'll subtract 25 from both sides. The positive 25 and the negative 25 cancel, and on the left side all I have is the x squared, and on the right side 50 minus 25 is 25. Now the square root property says that if you have a quantity squared on one side of the equation and a number on the other side, you can square root both sides. And the square root and the square are inverse operations, so those cancel off, and I have x. And the square root property says that you also need to put plus or minus on this side. And we know that the square root of 25 is 5. Now before I box this in, anytime that you work with rational equations, you have to check to make sure you don't have division by 0. So if I check right here, positive 5, if I substitute that into this denominator, I'll get 10, but when I substitute positive 5 into this denominator, I have 5 minus 5, which is 0. So I cannot use the positive 5. Now let's just look at the negative 5. If I substitute negative 5 into this denominator, negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So I can't use the negative either. So I can't use either of those solutions, and I need to write no solution, or you can also put the empty set if you like.